was asked, "What led you to become vegan?" Or, "Were you always vegan?" I was raised on a standard Canadian or American diet, with animal products such as beef, pork, fish, milk, eggs, etc. And I wouldn't have thought twice about wearing cowskin or having pillows full of goose down, though I don't particularly recall if I had those products in my life. Growing up, I had little to no choice about what was on my plate, in my wardrobe or in my house, and I had minimal to no knowledge of the animal suffering inherent in all animal products. With this in mind, as one who grew up using animals as products, I can't say if my heart was in any way anti-vegan. On the contrary, by looking back on my journey, I believe I was born vegan, only kept from fulfilling that calling immediately by a culture of misaligned beliefs and actions. This strikes me as sad, that like me 30 plus years ago, children today are being raised to believe animal use is normal, natural, and necessary, as Dr. Melanie Joy puts it. Children today are being made complicit in actions they would never choose if presented with the full knowledge of how animals get on their plate, and the knowledge that there are alternative options. The peregrination for me to living vegan was long. I had to shake free of many false presumptions impressed on me by my upbringing and by my culture. It saddens me to think of the likely arduous journey that lies before children who are born with compassion and a distaste for animal suffering, but raised in a world that makes animal exploitation convenient and normal. Religiously speaking, I was raised evangelical Pentecostal Christian. Animal welfare was never, to my memory, an aspect of my family or my denomination's faith. But the fruit of the Spirit, such as love, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control, were taught to me, as was the pursuit of truth and love. So it was only a matter of time before I would see a dissonance between truth, love, gentleness, kindness, self-control, etc., and how we treated animals. At around the age 18, my faith and my use of animals would converge for, I think, the first meaningful time, when working outside of a small pig slaughtering facility. As I heard the pigs scream for their lives, I began to realize eating animals wasn't as neutral as I had thought, that suffering was present, that they were being killed for me, and I had better have a good reason to continue to eat them. Around this same time, I was studying the Christian tradition and Jesus' teachings. I began to become aware that nonviolence was a stronger element of what it meant to be a Christ follower than I had previously understood. I perceived more of the violence present in the world and the suffering caused by it. I found the Christian tradition to be quite unfaithful in this calling to nonviolence throughout history. And yet the Christian tradition provided valiant examples of living a life of nonviolence as well. As I myself tried to work toward a life of nonviolence, as I believed it to be a Christian calling, I began to become more aware of the violence and oppression toward animals that was unnecessary in my life. As I began to try to align my beliefs with my practices, I first stopped eating pigs. Then a few years later, I stopped eating any mammals. Then I stopped wearing animals and buying animal-derived products. Then after a few years, I completely stopped eating chickens and turkeys. And finally, once I became certain it was healthy to do so, I eliminated all animal products, including milk, eggs, fish, and products tested on animals. There were a few awakenings, you might say, that pushed me forward at different points. I regret it took so long, but I understand that the truth of veganism was up against my conditioning and the messages of normalcy and neutrality subversive in my culture. Though my culture and my faith upbringing didn't directly bring me to veganism, the truths about right and wrong that are taught in my culture and faith made veganism the correct and moral choice. Veganism actually aligned with the said ethical beliefs of my upbringing, my culture, and my faith, just for some reason not with the practices. This dissonance, in my opinion, is why the vegan message is censored or distorted so vehemently. because the vegan message reveals a dissonance between who we say we are, compassion oriented and ethical, for example, and who we actually are, people enslaving, exploiting, and devouring innocent creatures. In the present, it has become more clearly unnecessary and harmful than ever before. I could go into much more detail about what moved me forward along the way, with anecdotes about moments of realization and growth, and perhaps at a different time, if asked, I will. But in a nutshell, it was the realization that not being vegan caused unnecessary violence and suffering to animals. As a so-called follower of Jesus, I could not be complicit in violence toward animals and the suffering of animals. Christian tenets like nonviolence, peace, kindness, gentleness, self-control, etc. aren't to be turned on and off when differentiating between humans and non-human animals. I believe they are to be left on all the time. In addition, if we allow ourselves to turn tenets like compassion and gentleness off and on, we will, I believe, inevitably leave them off with members of our own species as well, once we find some other arbitrary way to distinguish their worth as less than our own. In my life, once animal use was seen for what it was, harmful and unnecessary, being vegan, or eliminating all unnecessary animal exploitation and suffering, became as clearly correct as eliminating all unnecessary human exploitation and suffering. I now see being vegan a part of my moral baseline as I walk through life. It's not extraordinary, just unaligned with the majority. So to answer the question, what made you go vegan, or were you always vegan? I wasn't born vegan in expression, but I, like other children, was born vegan at heart, only held back by things like cultural traditions and norms. And I, like all children who seek to be good or better themselves and choose to question when actions are misaligned with said beliefs, was on a converging course with the truth that veganism is a moral baseline for human relations with animals, and a tenet of choosing a life of love and compassion. If you would like to ask me or my wife Shauna any questions about being vegan Christians or parents of children that we're raising vegan, please feel free to email us at veganabaptist@gmail.com, veganabaptist@gmail.com.